Right. So the interesting aspect is so far we've had no new questions from the audience. Okay, which means they're relying on my brain power to keep us engaged here. But let me ask you the more important question. I've gotten you talking about the standards work in general. When it comes to mobile world, we're all kind of H.264 fans. Is that being required as a must-have? Is it even in the HTML5 spec? Where do we stand on that?
So where it currently is in HTML5 is not I don't track that on a daily basis. The last I heard, they were still sort of arguing back and forth. They may have come to some conclusions over that. I think for the mobile devices, one of the reasons why it's most interesting there is because both Google and Apple are interested in 264, and so that's I think driving a lot of the uptake there. One of the things we have to consider is that there are either now or soon to be more mobile browsers than there are desktop browsers.
Right.
And that is skewing how people think about the world, or should be if it's not already.
I agree wholeheartedly that when you look at the majority of users out there, there's a great deal of added mobility to that, which gets into the issue of the canvas functionality. It's probably likely that people are going to have things like location-based services that are going to be, back in the old days when we first started with HTML, right? We had the frames over on the one side, on the left side, and then we had all the stuff up top, right? We should expect that we're going to start seeing us kind of widget out the HTML experience to get all that information, and particularly on the stuff you're working on with passing all that stateful information. Just out of curiosity, is there any use cases that are particularly interesting in keeping that stateful information flowing?
Well, one of the things we're doing is using the HTML5 data storage mechanism in the client to store a bunch of this state information. So as you go from page to page, you don't have to re-enter it. You don't have to re-log in. You don't have to reestablish streaming, etc. And we've done some really cool stuff in today's browsers just using that mechanism. And that's allowed us to build, I think, much more interesting sorts of apps. An example of this that's public is the Google Mail bit that if you turn it on, it's in the labs side, but if you turn it on, it'll cache all of your email locally so you can do local searches over it. And that kind of performance gain from moving data close to where it's being processed can be pretty powerful.
And should I think that peer-to-peer like processing is going to be embedded in some of this capability? No, it's not. So it's still client server.
Direct peer-to-peer doesn't match well with the web security model, because if I've got code that came from an untrusted source running in my browser and it's able to connect to things that are running on my local LAN, then what's to keep it from connecting to my internal database or my internal LDAP server, etc. So we need to be a little careful about having full-up peer-to-peer style stuff in a browser just because of that consideration. It's the mobile code consideration. And so having a trusted third party like a server to mediate that is probably still a good thing.
Okay. And you brought it up. What concerns should I have about phishing or PHP type security questions and those kind of issues?
The one I'm really interested in right now is the internationalization question of what happens to my URL when it's got non-English characters in it. And there's, we're doing a lot of work at the IETF right now because, several years ago, everybody in the standards organization woke up and said, oh, wait a second, not everybody speaks English.
Right.
And that has led to a ton of work, working with the Unicode folks, et cetera, trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we either retrofit that into older protocols or build it into our newer protocols? And that kind of, the opportunities for phishing that come out of that are interesting, and face issues around how do you prevent that. These are some tough questions.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You're not suggesting that kanji is better for phishing. You're saying that there's more opportunity in the retrofitting, right?
Well, yeah, you have to be careful because of the way that Unicode's defined. There's a lot of opportunities for things that look like other things but send different bytes in the wire, and that has led to some potential for phishing attacks. The browser vendors, for example, are trying to work around that and provide warnings when they see things that look fishy. But there's also work that needs to be done in the standards community. For example, is this the same URL as that URL? Can I compare these two things together? And say,
okay,
what if part of it is case insensitive, like we think of domain names?
right,
And
right.
how does that case insensitive work across multiple different languages, et cetera? So some of that stuff is, we thought we had it nailed, and it turns out that there were edge cases. There are always edge cases in the language bits that make it harder than anybody wants it to be, unfortunately.
Well, having watched translations from English to Chinese and Chinese to English, I can imagine that converting a domain name to its Chinese equivalent and vice versa probably doesn't go well.
Well, there's translation in natural language, and then there's translation in character set, and there's translation in coding, and all of those are different pieces of the problem that are being worked right now.
So let me take us back to the issue about the video, and when should we expect the video apps to start appearing? Do we have any?
So I think for YouTube, for example, they've already started to roll this out. If you visit YouTube on your iPad, for example, I think that they just go ahead and use the HTML5 tag so that it works.
Okay.
So I think the answer to that is right now, and then becoming more and more over time. I think that as sites start to use these things, that'll drive users to upgrade to more modern browsers.
Okay, so is it a client implementation issue that's really going to be the delay, or is it going to be on the server side?
It's client. The server side's relatively straightforward for most of this stuff, aside from WebSockets. Getting clients rolled out and getting them rolled out through the IT department in corporate America in particular, where they have websites that were hard-coded for IE6 and use ActiveX controls and that kind of thing, that's tough. And even in a company as forward-looking as Cisco, there's still a bunch of those kinds of things just because we're a Fortune 500 company that's been in business for 25 years. So
Got it. Joe, I really appreciate your time, and I want to thank you so much for participating in the event. It was informative and helpful, and I'm now convinced more than ever that I have to wait till Christmas for my iPad. So, having said that, I'll try YouTube on the iPad, and if it works, maybe I'll buy it in advance. Thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity, Carl.